Hello animators, this is Modelman and today we're gonna dive into everything you need to know about working with audio layers in Moho. In the first part of this tutorial, we'll start by exploring the fundamentals of audio waves and how they are created in Moho. We'll cover topics such as analog and digital signals, recording sound with your digital device, the conversion of sound to wave, and the different characteristics of audio files including sample rate, bit depth, channels, and bitrate. Additionally, we'll discuss how to convert audio formats and how Moho can display audio waves. We'll also delve into important sound-related keywords such as peak, wavelength, wave speed, frequency, amplitude, volume, pan, and pitch. Moving to the second part of the video, we'll demonstrate how to work with an audio layer in Moho. This includes understanding supported audio formats, downloading copyright-free sound effects, importing audio layers into your project, and exploring the differences between sound, audio, voice, and vocal. We'll also covering mixing and mastering techniques and walk you through using various options available in Moho for audio layers. Throughout the tutorial, we'll address common questions such as animating audio loudness, cutting or trimming sounds, exporting audio only, copying sounds within a layer, removing black backgrounds from video or image layers, adjusting the duration of video or GIF layers, and more. It's important to note that the scripts featured in this tutorial are official Moho scripts, eliminating the need for additional downloads. Whether you're a beginner or a pro, this video will provide valuable insights. While the tutorial is recorded in Moho 14 Pro and utilizes its new features, users of older versions such as Moho 13.5, 13, or 12 can still benefit from 70% of this content. Also, any features exclusive to Moho 14 will be clearly indicated. So don't worry about it and let's get started. The first thing that I'm gonna talk about is waves. Every audio has a series of waves which show you how loud and low the sounds of your audio are. The louder the sounds are, the higher and the lower your waves will be. To show you these waves, a software like Moho uses the data of your audio file that you have on your system. This data is actually the characteristics of your audio, such as sample rate, bit depth, channels, and bit rate of your audio. Now I'm going to talk about how a digital device can record a sound. When a sound is produced by your mouth or anything else, it will be an analog signal that can be represented as a line graph. And to record the sound, your recorder has to record this line graph. But an analog signal is constantly changing. So it doesn't matter how good your computer is, it doesn't matter how many points of this line graph can be memorized by your system, there is always a limit. So let's say your system can memorize 1 billion points. There will still be infinite number of points between every 2 points memorized by your system. It's just like a camera. Every year a new camera with a higher resolution is made, but the next year a better camera will be made and the next year a better one. And it never ends because there is always a limit for each camera. We can say the same thing about recorders. They also have their own limits. In order to record a sound, digital devices such as your microphone or your computer or your smartphone have to separate your sound into different sections. We call each one of these sections sample. So a computer isn't able to process an analog signal because we have infinite number of points on it. Just like a camera that converts light into pixels, an analog signal needs to be turned into a digital signal throughout the sampling process. So when you use a digital device, like a smartphone or a computer to record a sound, they need to convert these analog waves to digital waves so they can play it. Now I'm going to talk about how the sampling process is done. While your recorder is recording your sound and receiving analog signal, first your recorder separates your line graph into different sections, you know that we call them sample, and then it stores the characteristics of each section into your audio file. Simply it says, okay, these are the values of this section, these are the values of the other one, and so on. And then it stores them into your audio file. So this is how your digital device can record a sound. Also, if you connect these points to each other, you will have a simpler line graph, and the softwares usually convert it to a bar graph and they mirror it like this. And now what you see here is a digital signal that we created from our analog signal. Now let's talk about characteristics that are stored into an audio file. First, we have sample rate. It is the number of samples taken per second to represent the sound wave. The unit of it is 1000 samples per second. And here you can see the wave of an audio with a higher sample rate. And this one is the wave of an audio with a lower sample rate. You can see that an audio with a higher sample rate can preserve more ups and downs than an audio with a lower sample rate. Having a higher sample rate means having more points and sections and more samples, which means that you have more accurate waves and therefore a higher quality. And this means that you will have a clearer sound. The next characteristic of audio is bit depth. To explain it, I have to say that your audio has a limit for loudness and a limit for quietness, meaning that your sound cannot be louder or quieter than those limits. So your sounds will be limited to be in a range. We call this range dynamic range. So dynamic range is actually a number, and just like any other number in your computer, it has to be stored as a series of bits. Each bit can be 0 or 1. So your dynamic range is a series of ones and zeros. The wider your dynamic range is, the higher its number will be, and therefore the more bits should be stored into your audio file. And what is bit depth? Bit depth refers to the number of bits used to represent the dynamic range. Also, I have to say that the unit of bit depth is bits, and you should know that when you create a sound with a higher bit depth, you're creating it with a wider dynamic range and a higher number of bits, which means that your audio can be louder or quieter than when you use a lower bit depth. Some common bit depths are 16-bit, 32-bit, and 64-bit. The next characteristic that we want to talk about is channels. The channel that I'm talking about is not the channel that we have in Moho timeline. An audio file usually has 1 or 2 channels. If it has 1 channel, it means that the sounds of your right speaker are as loud as the sounds of your left speaker, and we call it mono. But if your sound has 2 channels, one of them will be the waves of your left speaker, and one of them will be the waves of your right speaker. And since it has 2 channels, we call that audio stereo. Right now you're listening to my mono voice with 1 channel, and now my voice is stereo because it has 2 channels. You can hear my voice moving from your right ear to your left ear. It's because it's stereo and not mono. A common mistake is that people usually call a stereo sound a 3D sound, but stereo is not actually 3D. Because being 3D is not just about the sound going from left to right or from right to left. It's about hearing the sounds from different directions in 3D space, or feeling how far or how close they are just by listening to them. This can be achieved by adding some effects to your sound and choosing the best frequency and volume for each speaker. Also, you may need to have more than 2 channels. So rather than 1 or 2, an audio can have multiple channels as well. For example, you may have a center speaker rather than the right and the left one, and in that case you can add a 3rd channel for the sounds of the center speaker. The volume and the effects of each channel can be different from the other ones. Let me show you an example of creating a 3D sound. Let's say we have a guitar on the left and a piano on the right and a drum at the center. In this case, to have 3 channels, we use 3 microphones next to each instrument to record the sound of each instrument to a channel. And you know that each one of these microphones not only can record the sound of the instrument next to them, but also they can record the sound of the other instruments as well, which is totally fine. And after recording, you should mix all of these channels into an audio file using an audio software. Also, in this stage, you can apply some effects if you want to each channel of your audio. After that, you can import this audio into Moho or play it using a player. While you're playing your 3D sound, if you use 3 speakers, each speaker can play its own channel. And although you don't actually have those instruments, when you listen to a 3D sound, it's like you have them in front of you. And since the sound of piano is louder in your right speaker, you'll feel that the piano is on your right hand. And because the sound of your guitar is louder in your left speaker, you'll feel that it's on your left hand. And since you mostly hear the sounds of the drum from the center speaker, you will feel that the drum is at the center. And this is how a 3D sound can be created. Now I'm gonna talk about bitrate. It's not a new thing, it's just a value that is calculated by this formula. Bitrate is actually sample rate times bit depth, and the unit of bitrate is kilobit per second, and it shows you the quality of your audio file. For example, if the bitrate is 320 kilobits per second, it means that you have 320 kilobits in each second of your audio file. Every one of these bits can be 0 or 1. Audio files have different formats. Some common formats for an audio file are MP3 and WAV. WAV file typically has a higher bitrate than the other formats. For example, their bitrate can be 1411 kilobits per second. And although the bitrate of MP3 is usually less than WAV, it is the preferred format because it is much smaller in size and can be imported into many softwares, and it's faster to load and therefore easier to use. Some common bitrates for MP3 are 32, 64, 128, 192, 256, and 320 kilobits per second. By looking at the formula, you can see that to have a higher bitrate, we have to have a higher bit depth and higher sample rate. You know that having a higher sample rate makes your sound clearer, and having a high bit depth will increase the dynamic range, so you can have louder and quieter sounds, and that's why a bitrate like 320 is clearer and louder than a bitrate like 180. Now let's talk about changing formats. As you know, every software can recognize some certain formats, so the software that you use might not be able to recognize the format that you want to import into it. In these kind of situations, you have to convert your audio format to something else. One of the easiest way to do this is doing it online. To convert the format of your audio file to other formats online, first you type the format of your audio +2 plus the format that you want to convert it into, then search it on the internet and you will find some websites that can do this for you. Working with them is not really hard. You just have to drag and drop to upload your file, then you click on the convert button, and after that your file will be ready to download. Also, some websites have some features to change the bitrate of your audio or change its bit depth. But you should know that you cannot increase the quality of your audio files by converting them into a file with a higher bitrate. So for instance, once you converted a 320 bitrate audio to 180 bitrate audio, you can still convert it back to 320 bitrate, but the quality has already lost. So what your converter will do is that it just increases the number of samples. So we can say that if you see an audio with a bitrate of 320, it doesn't mean that it is actually a 320 bitrate audio, because it might be a file with 180 bitrate that has been converted into 320 bitrate. So do not trust the websites that tell you the bitrate of their audios are 320. There might be some sounds with 180 bitrate that they've converted them into 320 bitrate. And that's where most websites can scam. Now let's talk about viewing the waves in Moho and other softwares. The way you see the waves of your audio files vary in different softwares. In some softwares you see them as a line graph, in others the line graph will be filled with a color, and in some softwares such as Moho, you will see it as a bar graph. So seeing your audio waves as a bar graph does not mean that Moho decreases the quality of your audio files. It's just a way of showing waves to you, okay? Now I'm gonna talk about some important keywords when it comes to working with an audio file and its wave. The first word is peak. Peaks are the points that have greater values than the others. Then we have wavelength. It refers to the length of a wave from one peak to the next one. We call this distance wavelength. Next we have wave speed. It's the distance a wave travels in a second. For instance, if your wave speed is 2, it means that when your sound is produced, the wave of it moves with a speed of 2 meters per second until it reaches your ear and you can hear it. After that we have frequency. It's wave speed divided by wavelength. Frequency is actually the number of vibration per second. This is a wave with low frequency and this is a wave with high frequency. Next we have amplitude. is the height of a wave as measured from the highest point on the wave to the lowest point on the wave. We call this distance amplitude. After that we have volume, is the loudness of your sound. In Moho we call it audio level. For example, now the volume of my voice is increasing and now it's decreasing. Then we have pan. As I explained to you in channels, when your sound has two channels, you might hear the sound moving from your right speaker to your left speaker and vice versa, and we call these kinds of sounds stereo. Pan is a value that shows you the loudness of a sound in your speakers. For pan, 0 means you're gonna hear the sound equally from your speakers, and values less than 0 means that the sound is louder in your left speaker, and values more than 0 means the sound is louder in your right speaker. For example, now because the value of pan is 0, you're hearing my voice in your left speaker as loud as your right speaker. But now I'm panning my voice to your right speaker, and now I'm panning my voice to your left speaker. After that we have pitch. In software, pitch is actually a value that shows you how high or how low the tone of your sound is. Warning, I'm gonna change my voice, so please don't be afraid.
This is a lower pitch of my actual sound.
And this is a higher pitch of my actual sound.
We use low pitch for men, giants and big creatures, or maybe evil creatures, and we use high pitch for women, children, and for tiny creatures. But you can use them for anything that you want. There is no rule for it. One common problem is that people mistakenly use one of these 4 words instead of the other one. So I want to talk about their definitions so you can understand the difference between them. First we have sound. Sound is actually everything that we hear. Audio is the same as sound, but it's a technical term referring to the sound of an electronic device or a recording. Voice is the sound we hear from the mouth of a person, like the voice of me that you're hearing right now. And then we have vocal. Vocals are musical sounds that you make with your voice. Like for example, when I'm singing a song, I'm making a vocal. For example, when I sing that popular song, and nothing else matters. Because I'm singing a song, you can call my voice a vocal. Now I'm gonna talk about what audio formats are supported by Moho. As you can see here, we have different formats like AIF, FLAC, M4A, MP3, OGG, WAV. All of these formats can be imported into Moho. As you can see, if I drag and drop, they will be imported into Moho. And another thing is that Moho supports different bit rates and different bit depths. So the bit rate of your file or the bit depth of your file doesn't matter. All of them can be imported into Moho. In this tutorial, we're going to work on different projects, and in each project, we're going to use different sound effects. That's why I decided to teach you how to find your favorite sound effect on the internet. To find your favorite sound effect, first you type the name of your sound plus sound effect plus no copyright and search it on the internet, or you can search it on YouTube, and then you'll find it. Also, you should know that the first time that you import a sound into Moho, sometimes you need to play your animation and stop it so Moho can load the sound. If you don't do this, you might hear the sound late in your first play, but the next time that you play it, your sound will be played correctly. Now I'm going to talk about how you can import an audio file into your project. One way is that you can click on here, and then you choose audio, and next you choose your audio files and choose open. This way they can be imported into your project. Another way is that you can go to file, import, and general import. This way, rather than your audio files, you can see the files with other formats like PNG and JPG. Because we chose general import, now we can see all supported files and we can import them. Then you choose your audio file and choose open. Another way is that you can double click on it like this. Rather than general import, you can go to import and choose audio file. This way, you will only be able to see the audio files, not image files, and then you can import them. See? And the last way is that you can just go to the address of your file and drag on it and drop it into your project. Don't drop it on here or here or here or here. You have to drop it inside your workspace, I mean here. As soon as you release it, your file will be imported into your project. Now I'm going to teach you how you can use the audio options in timeline window. To begin, I'm gonna import an audio file into my project. It's actually a voice. Let's listen to it.
Would you like to join me? No? Why not?
As you can see, this audio file has 3 sentences. This is the waves of the first sentence, this is the waves of the second sentence, and this is the waves of the third one. But this green triangle here shows you the start of your audio file, and this red triangle here shows you the end of your audio file. So this is actually where your sound is gonna start, and this is where it's gonna end. Another thing is that, let me delete this layer. If we import an audio while we're not on the frame 0, like we go to frame 72, and then we import our audio file into our project, it will be imported from the frame 72 and not 0. And you can see that we have a new channel here called layer visibility, and because this is where your sound is gonna start, Moho will turn off your sound before the frame 72. See? I'll teach you how you can turn on or off your sound using layer visibility later in this video. But now I just wanted to show you that when you're not on the frame 0, your sound will be imported from the place of your playhead, which is now 72. To move a sound in your timeline, forward or backward, you can hold down your right click inside this area and drag to the left or right to move your sound forward or backward. Another way is that you can use sequencer. In sequencer, rather than using right click, you can just drag on the layer itself to move it forward or backward. Also, if you have a lot of layers in your sequencer like this, by holding down your right click and drag, you can pan in your sequencer. And this way you can find the layer that you want or the part of the sound that you're looking for faster. Let me delete these layers. Another way to move your audio layer is that you can just go to the frame that you want and select your audio layer, and then you go to animation and you choose set layer start time. This way Moho will move your layer so that the start of it will be your current frame. Another thing is that when you have multiple layers, you can't just hold down the control and select some of them and move them using right click or drag. As you can see, every time Moho will only move the last layer that you selected and not the others. I mean the brighter one. See? Moho only moves the number 5 and not the others. To move some audio layers with each other in your timeline forward or backward, first you have to group them. You can just hold down the control and select the layers that you want, or another way is that you can select one of them, hold down the shift key and select the bottom layer in your group. And then we can't create a group, as you can see, because we are not on the frame 0. So we go back to frame 0 and right click on here and choose group with selection. This way a group will be created, and using right click we can move our group, and this way the sublayers of our group, the audio layers, will move with it. So this is how you can move your audio layers forward or backward with each other. Obviously, you can move this group forward or backward using set layer start time or by dragging on its layer in sequencer as well. Let me delete this group. When you have an audio layer like this one and you want to play your animation without hearing your audio layers, you can just click on this option. This way, all of your audio layers will be muted, and now if I play, you can see that we can't hear anything. But as soon as you turn it on, you will hear the sounds. See?
No?
Also, you should know that this option has nothing to do with your render. So if you mute them, you're still gonna hear them when you render your project. So we only use it when we don't want to hear the sounds while the animation is being played in our workspace. Other than this mute option, you can use mute audio in animation drop-down menu. And now I'm gonna talk about different types of sounds that you need to use in your project. First, we have dialogues. They are the sentences, words, whispers that your characters create. Next, we have sound effects. A sound effect is a sound other than speech or music that is not made by human, like the sound of closing a door. Next, we have background sounds. They are the sounds in our animation with a lower volume, like air, people in the city talking to each other, wind, driving cars, and working people. Next, we have theme songs, like the songs that are created using a piano, guitar, or any other instruments that you hear in your animations. Theme songs can be instrumental or even a vocal music. An example of when you hear a vocal music is when you're watching an emotional scene and you hear someone singing. Sometimes even you see the person in your animation performing that song for you. And sometimes you don't, you just hear it. Although using all of these sounds is highly recommended, the choice is yours. So you might prefer to use a few of them instead of using all of them, which is totally fine. Now let's talk about how to mix and master. For your animation project, to use the sounds in your animation, there are two stages. The first one is called mixing stage. In this stage, you play every sound individually and adjust their audio levels individually and match them with your animation individually. The next stage is called mastering stage. In this stage, you play all of the sounds together, then you adjust the audio level of them again, and you should know that the voice of your characters and your sound effects should ideally be at least 3 times louder than your background sounds. But you might change this rule depending on your project. And finally, you have to check to see if your sounds match with your animation or not. So this is how you can mix and master your sounds for your animation. And now I'm going to show you how you can do it with an example. As you can see here, we have an animation of a saw cutting a wood. And to begin, I'm going to go to frame 0 and import my audio files into my project. So I'm going to drag on all of them and then import them into my project. To play them individually, you can turn off your sounds like this, so you can play one of them only. The first sound that we have is something like this. So you hear the sounds of cars and people speaking with each other, the sound of air. So this is actually the background sound, but as you can see, the waves of it starts from here. But we want to have this sound from the beginning of our animation. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to hold on the right click and drag this sound to the left so we can have it from the first frame. Now we're going to take a look at this sound. Let me turn off this one and click on this one, and then I'm going to play it for you. As you can see here, we have the sound of a saw, but it doesn't match with our animation. If you look at the animation, throughout our animation, this saw is gonna move back and forth like this. So to begin, I'm gonna find the start point. It should be somewhere around here. This is the first time in this animation that the saw is gonna cut this wood. So using right click, I'm gonna drag on this area to the left so we can match the beginning of our sound with the beginning of the movement of the saw. Now if I play it, we have something like this. But the rest of the sound doesn't match with our animation. One of the things that you can do here is that you can separate these parts of your sound and match them separately with your movements. If you look at the wave, as our saw moves back and forth, we have this part for moving back and this part for moving forth and so on. First, I'm gonna cut this part. So I'm gonna click on here, right click on my audio layer, go to quick settings, and then I uncheck visible and choose apply. And the rest of this layer will be red, and Moho will create a keyframe here at the place of our playhead. So now the sound will be turned off after this keyframe. See? Like this. Now I'm gonna duplicate this sound and hit enter to confirm its name. And then I'm gonna delete this keyframe. So this time in this new layer, we want to keep this part and turn off the rest of the audio. So first I go to frame 0, right click on my layer, choose quick settings, uncheck visible, click on apply, then I click on here, or maybe here. Again, I right click on my layer, go to quick settings, check visible to turn on my sound and choose apply. Then I click on here and turn it off like this, and then I choose apply. Then to close this window, you can click outside of it or hit the escape key from your keyboard. Now I go to sequencer, so you can see both of these sounds. And let me play this animation for you once again. Okay, for the second part, I'm gonna move this layer a little bit forward, like this, using right click. Let's play it again. Okay, so now I'm gonna click on this layer to rename it. Let's call it saw forward. And then I'm gonna choose this layer and click on it again and type saw backward. Now I'm gonna duplicate this layer and move it forward, somewhere around here. And let's play this animation once again. Okay, a little bit further. So let's play it again. Okay, it works. Then we select this layer, duplicate it, and move it forward, somewhere around here. Let me play it. Okay, again I'm going to duplicate this one and move it forward. Okay, it should be somewhere around here. Okay, it works. Also, it's better to change their orders. So the order of them will be based on the order of our animation. Let me play it once again. Okay, it should be somewhere around here. Okay, once again I'm gonna duplicate this one and move it to up here. I'm gonna hold on the right click and put it here. Let me play it. Let me play it again. Okay, it should be somewhere around here. Or maybe further. Okay, I think I should move this one as well. Let's listen to it again. And move this one here. Very good. Now I want to turn all of them off. And then I go back to channels and frame 0. And I turn on this layer and choose it. In this layer, I have a lot of sounds from the wood. See? We don't have these sounds, so I'm gonna just drag on it to move it to the left. Let's listen to this one. No. It wasn't bad, but let's listen to the rest of them. I think I like this part. Let me listen to it once more. Yes, let's see what else do we have. Okay, let's use this part. So now I'm gonna find the falling moment. It should be somewhere around here. Then I right click and drag on this area to move my sound to the right. Let's listen to it. It should be good, but we have to cut this sound. So I'm gonna go to frame 0, right click on this layer, choose quick settings, uncheck this checkbox and click on apply. Then I go to the frame 120 and I right click on this layer again and go to quick settings and I choose visible and click on apply. Next I'm gonna click on here, right click on this layer again and go to quick settings and uncheck it. And then I click on apply. Now let's listen to it again. Not bad. It's time to master our sounds. Let's enable the rest of the sounds, except the background audio, and listen to it. Not bad. Now I go to sequencer and I have to match these sounds with each other a bit. So for example, I go to this frame, maybe this one, I move this sound to the left. For example here, then I move this sound to the right, like this. Let's listen to it again. Let's listen to this one. I'm gonna move this layer one frame to the left and go to channels and move this keyframe one frame to the right. Let's listen to it once more. Perfect. Now I'm gonna turn on my background sound and play my animation again. As you can see, the background sound is very loud, so we can go back to frame 0, and while the background sound is selected, we click on audio level and we can decrease it. For example, I want to type 0.3 maybe, and then I click on OK. Let's listen to it once more. And I think it's better to move these two layers forward a bit. Let's listen to it once again. Let me see, I think it's better to move this one a little bit to the right. Let me check it. Yes. And now if we play it again, it will work. So this is how you can mix your sounds with each other. As you can see here, we have an animation from a series called Rick and Morty. And in this example, I want to show you how you can record a sound for your animation. To begin, I'm going to go to frame 0, and then I go to Window and click on Audio Recording. A window will show up. Using this window, you can record your sounds. I'm going to move it to right here, so you can see the project. Here we have a record button. If I click on it, it will start to record your sound. And if I click on it again, it will be stopped. The time that you see here shows you the duration of your recording. So first, let me record a sound. Hello, how are you? And now you can see that this button is now available for us. So we can listen to our recording. Let me click on it. Hello, how are you? And the time that you see here is the time of your recording that Moho is playing. Another thing is that if I click on record button again and stop it, my previous recording will be gone. So be careful. As soon as you record something again, you will lose your previous recording unless you add it to your project. And you should know that if you close this window and open it again, your recording will be gone. So before you start to record for the second time, or before you close this window, make sure you don't want the sound, or if you want it, make sure you add it to your project, unless you're gonna lose it. The next thing is that as soon as I hit this button, your playhead won't move. So you're not gonna see your animation while you're recording a sound. If you want to see your animation while you're recording a sound, you have to check this option, Sync with Timeline Playback. As soon as you check it, the next time that you hit the record button, you can see that I'm recording while the animation is playing. Also here you can see a bar. As soon as you hit this record button, you can see the volume of your sound here. So you'll know that how loud or how low your sound is while you're recording a sound. Here you can see an input, and if I click on it, I can change it. So right now I can record my sound using one of these three options. These options are related to my own system. So when you open this window, you might see different options here and here. But actually it doesn't matter which one you choose. Right now, no matter which one I choose, Moho always uses this option to record my sounds. To actually change your input, you can right click on here and go to sound settings. And as you can see here, we have an option called input. Let me scroll down and I can choose one of these two. This is my microphone and this is the microphone of my laptop. The names that you see here might be different for you because you might use different microphones. But since this option is checked, no matter which option I choose from here, Moho will always use this one to record the sounds. And if I want to change it, I have to check the other option. Also, if you don't have this icon here, you can click on your search and type settings and go to settings. After you open it, you go to system and then sound, and then you can change your input. Let's go back to Moho, and to close this drop down menu, I'm gonna click on here, and now let's see what we can record. Help me, Rick, please help me. And now that I recorded my sound, I can listen to it. Help me, Rick, please help me. Help me, Rick. Not bad. So you can duplicate the audio layer of your recording and separate it into different sentences and match it with your animation if you want, as I did the same thing in saw example. And a good thing is that since we checked this option, if I play it, you can listen to your recordings while you're watching your animation. And it helps you to see if the sound matches with your animation or not. Since this is a tutorial, I'm not gonna record it again. And as you can see, we have an option here called pitch shifting. And if I change it,
Help me, Rick! Please help me! Help!
Moho will convert my voice to a voice with a higher pitch. Or you can test it with a lower pitch. See?
Help me, Rick. Please help me.
Something like that. To reset your pitch, you can just click on here. And I'm gonna make sure I'm on the frame 0. Then I choose add to project. And from here you can choose an address to save your sound. So I'm gonna type something like help me. The format of it will be wave. You don't have any other options. And then you click on save. So now your audio will be saved into that address, and then it will be imported into your project from the place of your playhead on top of the layer that you select. So for example, if we select this layer and try to add this sound, the audio layer will be created at the top of it. Let me play it. Help me, Rick. Please help me. And since we haven't closed this window or recorded a new sound, I can add this sound again and again in my timeline. So for example, if I click on here, I can choose add to project and I can type something new. For example, let's call it help me 2. And then I choose save, and it will be added as a new layer from the place of my playhead into my project. And since we selected this layer, the new audio layer will be created on top of it. Of course, you still can change the order of it and move it to somewhere else. And you can use right click or other methods that I taught you to move your audio backward or forward in your project. Let me delete this layer. We still have this one. Let me select it. And we can change the pitch. For example, let's say we click on here.
Help me, Rick! Please help me!
And to add this one, I'm gonna add it from this frame. Then I click add to project, choose a name for it, like high pitch, and then I choose save. So as long as you keep this window open, you can add what you recorded to your project over and over with the same or different pitches. And you should know that the name that you choose for your audio file to save will be assigned to the name of your audio layer. Of course, you can click on it and change it if you want. And that's it. This is how you can record your sounds and import them into your project. Here in this example, I imported a sound into my project, as you can see. Let me play it for you.
Would you like to join me? No? Why not?
So as you can see, we have 3 sentences here. And now I'm going to talk about how you can use the options in layer settings window. Let's start with general tab. The first option that I'm going to talk about is visible. Using this option, you can turn on or off your sound throughout your animation. Obviously, when you are on the frame 0, this checkbox will have effect on your entire timeline. And that's why our audio layer is on in our entire animation right now. If you uncheck it and click on apply or OK, it will be off. So now if I play it, you can't hear anything. So now that we have no sound, let's say we want to turn on this sentence and turn off the other 2. To do that, I can click on here and check visible. Then if I click on OK, a keyframe will be created at the place of our playhead and this window will be closed. If you don't want this window to be closed, instead of OK, you choose apply. So now if I click on apply, my sound will be turned on, and to turn it off again, I can click on here and uncheck this option. And since I don't want this window anymore, I can choose OK. Let's listen to it again.
No?
So as you can see, we can only hear this part. Also, as I explained before, the name of this channel is layer visibility. And the red part in your timeline shows you that your audio will be turned off in these areas. And now we have 3 keyframes in our channel. The first one, which is going to be this one, will turn off our audio. This one will turn it on. And again, this one will turn it off. So after you create some keyframes in this channel, if you want to create some more keyframes, you can use the previous ones. So for example, let's say we want to turn this audio on from here. And since we know that this keyframe will turn it on, we just select it, hold down the Control and press C and then V to copy this keyframe and paste it to the place of our playhead. And then we click on here, drag to select this keyframe, hold down the Control and press C and then V to copy this keyframe and paste it to the place of our playhead. Another way to create keyframes for your layer visibility is that you can right click on your layer and go to Quick Settings, and then you can check Visible and click on Apply to add a keyframe at the place of your playhead. But the problem with this method is, as soon as you go to another keyframe, your Quick Settings window will be gone. So every time you want to create a keyframe, you have to right click on here, go to Quick Settings to open it again. Let me hit Escape to close this window. And if you want to open your Quick Settings window faster, you can right click on here. Make sure you check Quick Settings from here. And then I'm gonna drag on this line to the left. So you can see this tiny triangle. Using this option, you can open your Quick Settings window with one click. See? And then you can create keyframe for your layer visibility like this. I'm gonna hit Escape button to close this window. After you create some keyframes, you can move them if you want, to tell Moho which part of your audio you want to be heard and which part you don't. Also, we have some other channels here, like audio level and restart media, and these are the only channels related to your audio that you can animate and create keyframes for them. We don't have any other channels for audio. Let me delete these keyframes. I hit the delete key, then I go back to frame 0, click on here and turn my layer on and choose apply. Then I hit escape to close this window and double click on my audio layer and go to audio tab. In this tab we have some other options for audio layer. Let me move this window to the right. Using this option, you can replace your audio file with another audio file. Rather than that, we use this option to fix a problem. Let me show you. When you have a file like this and you have imported it into your project, if you change the name of it or delete it, Moho won't be able to recognize it anymore. So for example, I'm gonna change its name to something like this. If I click on here to confirm the name and go to Moho, you can see that we have a cross icon on the icon of our audio layer and the waves are gone. So if we play it, Moho won't be able to play it anymore. I'm gonna go back to frame 0, double click on my layer and go to audio tab. So now using this option, we can replace it. See? I go to the address of my file and choose it and then click on open. And now if I click on OK, it will be replaced with my new audio file. Another option that we have in layer settings window is reveal source audio. We use this option to find the address of our audio file in case we forget where we saved it. So now if I click on it, it will go to the address of my audio file and select my audio file so I can find it. Let's go back to Moho. The next option that we're going to talk about is audio level. It is actually the volume of your audio, and in the layer settings of Moho 14, it is based on %. But in Moho 13.5, if you go to the layer settings of an audio layer, you can see that it's based on 1 unit. So to compare audio level in Moho 13.5 with audio level in Moho 14, I have to say that if you want to type 0.5 here, and you want to do the same thing in Moho 14, here because the value is based on %, you have to type 50%. Also, as you can see by default in Moho 14, the value is 100, and you can type any value that you want for audio level. For example, right now, because we are on the frame 0, your volume will be turned off for the entire animation, and you won't hear anything. You can type values less than 0, like minus 100, but it doesn't make any difference compared to 0. And if you want to increase the volume of your sound, you can type a value more than 100, like 200. So now if I click on OK, I'm gonna hear the sound as loud as possible. But you have to remember, because the speakers that we use have a certain capacity, there is a limit. So no matter what you type here, if the volume is gonna pass that limit, Moho will reduce it automatically so that your speakers will be able to play them for you. Also, as you can see, we are on the frame 0, and for audio level, we have a channel here. So any value that you type here will be applied to this keyframe, and since we don't have any other keyframes, you're gonna hear your audio with the same audio level as the audio level of this keyframe. So let's say we type 0 and click on OK. And because we typed 0, the sound will be turned off for the entire animation. Let me go to the audio tab again. To create more keyframes, you have to go to a frame other than 0, like this, and type your value. After that, you can click on apply, and the keyframe will be created for you. Now I can make a copy of this keyframe by selecting it and holding down the Control and pressing C, and then I click on here and press Ctrl V. Let me move this window to here. Then for this one, I'm gonna decrease the audio level. So I'm gonna click on here, type something like 50 or 60, and then click on apply. Then I click on here and make a copy of this keyframe and paste it using Ctrl C and V. Then again, I click on here and type something like 30 and click on apply. And we don't need to create a keyframe here because as long as we don't have any keyframe after this keyframe, the value will remain the same, 30%. So I'm gonna click on OK to close this window and play these sounds for you.
Would you like to join me? No? Why not?
And as you can see, the audio level of this one is 100%, the audio level of this one is 60%, and the audio level of this one is 30%. So using audio level channel, you can change the volume of your audio throughout your animation. There are some other ways to add these keyframes. For example, one way is that you can right click somewhere on your audio level channel. For example, I want to right click on here, and then you choose add keyframe. But you have to be careful where you right click. If you right click on a wrong channel or on a wrong frame and choose add keyframe, a keyframe will be added on a wrong channel and on a wrong frame. Let me delete this keyframe. Another way to add a keyframe on this channel is that first you go to the frame that you want to add your keyframe, and from up here, you click on animation and choose audio level. And as you can see, instead of %, here the value is based on 1 unit, just like Moho 13.5. If you don't want to change it, but you want to add a keyframe, you just click on OK. Let me hit Ctrl Z. Or when you select it, you can drag on this value like this, or type any value that you want and click on OK. And it will add a keyframe based on the value that you typed. See? Also, we have another option here called add keyframe. You can also use this option, and it will not only add keyframe for audio level channel, but also it will add keyframe for the position, scale, and rotation of your layer. I mean these values that you see up here. Let me delete these keyframes. I'm gonna hit the delete key. And when you're using sequencer instead of channels, since you don't have any channel here, you can change your audio level from here. If you click on it, this window will show up and you can choose any value that you want and click on OK. And a keyframe will be added for the selected layer, but since we chose sequencer, we can't see the keyframe. To see it, we have to go back to channels. Here is the keyframe. Let me delete it. Another way to create a keyframe or change the value of your audio level is that you can use motion graph. To use it, make sure your audio layer is selected, and then you have to find audio level channel, which is gonna be this one. After that, you double click on it, and then you can see the values here from 0 to 1, and you will see this line graph that is based on the values of your audio layer. To change the value of a keyframe, you can drag on that keyframe and move it up or down like this. To add a keyframe, you can double click on your line graph like this, and a keyframe will be added. Also, you can drag to draw a rectangle and release the click to select multiple keyframes, and then you can move them up or down or left or right. And using this method, you can change the value of multiple keyframes at the same time, as you can see. Let me delete all of these keyframes. Then I go back to frame 0 and channels. The next option that we have in layer settings window is spatial positioning. Using this option, you can pan your sound to the left or right based on the position of your layer. I'm going to show you how you can use it with an example. So now in this example, I have some files and I want to import them into my project. The first file that I have is a background. Let me import it. To find an image like this on the internet, you can search cartoon road background. And if I go to view and choose show output only or use its shortcut Ctrl J, the spaces out of my frame will be black, meaning that we can only see this part in our render. So let me scale my image. After that, I want to import the other two files. So I have a car here with PNG format and an audio file. I can select both of them and import them. And to find the images like this car on the internet, you can search something like cartoon car PNG, and then you can find a lot of transparent cars like this car that we have right now. Let me scroll down to zoom out so we can see these control points. Then I'm going to drag from the corner to scale this car. And before I set the position of it, let's talk about how to use spatial positioning. Right now, because this option is unchecked, if we listen to this audio, the sounds in our left speaker will be as loud as the sounds in the right speaker. See? And it means that this sound that we have will be played mono and not stereo. And since I want to have this sound at the beginning of my animation, I hold down the right click and drag to the left to move this sound to the left. And then I go back to frame 0. And this time I want to double click on my layer and go to audio tab and check spatial positioning and click on apply. When you check spatial positioning, your sound will be a stereo sound. So now, if you go to a frame like 1 and move the position of your audio layer to the right of your workspace, you can pan your sounds to your right speaker. This way the sounds in your right speaker will be louder than the sounds in your left speaker. And if you move your sound to the left, I'm going to hold down the shift key while moving it so I can move it horizontally. Because this audio is on the left of my workspace, the sounds in my left speaker will be louder than the sounds in my right speaker. Let me play it for you so you can hear it. See, the sound will move from one speaker to another. Let me delete these two keyframes. You can also group them if you want. So make sure you're on the frame 0. Then I'm going to hold down the control and add this layer to my selection, the layer of my car. After that, I right click on one of them and choose group with selection. Let's call it car again and hit enter to confirm the name. And then I move this group to the right, click on here. Hold on the shift key so I can move it horizontally, and then I drag on it and move it to the left. Let's watch the animation. Also, if you don't want to change the position of your group, you can use bones as well. Let me delete this keyframe and go back to frame 0 and reset the position of my group. Then I right click on my group and convert it to a bone layer. Then using add bone tool, I draw a bone like this. Actually, you can draw it in every direction that you want. It doesn't matter. And there are different ways to animate it. So let's say I have another layer, like a vector layer in this group. And I'm going to call it cloud. And hit enter to confirm its name. And using blob brush, I'm going to hold on the Alt key and drag to the left to decrease the size of it. And draw a cloud like this. And then I go back to my bone layer. And if I want to test it, as you can see, when I move this bone, my cloud will move with it. Let me hit Ctrl Z. And the reason is that the strength of this bone will have effect on your cloud. So while this bone is selected, I'm going to choose bone strength tool and set its strength to 0. And in this case, you can draw another bone for this cloud like this. Make sure it's selected and then set its strength to 0. And then to rig it, we select the layer of our cloud and using bind layer tool, you can attach the selected layer to a bone like this. And then I select my car layer, and while this tool is selected, I'm gonna attach the layer of my car to this bone. And let's do the same thing with audio layer. So actually you can attach an audio layer to a bone. Then I go back to my bone layer, and while select bone tool is selected, I'm gonna select this bone, and then I select reparent bone tool. And as you can see, this bone is the parent of this bone. So when I move this bone, that one will be moved as well. And I don't want it to be moved. So I'm gonna click on somewhere to break this connection. Then I go to the first frame of my animation, and using transform bone tool, I hold my mouse on this bone so I can see these red points. And then I drag on this point and move my car and my sound to the right of my workspace and release the click. Then I go to this frame and I drag on this point, hold on the shift key so I can move it horizontally, and I move it to the left of my workspace and release the click, and then I release the shift key. Then I hold on the alt key and right click on the frame 72 because this is the end frame of my animation. I don't want the frames after it to be played, and then I play it. So this is how you can convert your mono sounds to stereo sounds and pan them from left to right or vice versa in your animation. The next option that we have in audio tab is this option. It says for more accurate lip syncing, enter the spoken text below. This option is related to frame by frame layers and switch layers. So in this video I'm not gonna talk about it. I'll show you how to use it in the next videos of this season. And rather than these options, let's say we have several audio layers like this. If you select one of them, hold down the control and add the other ones to your selection, or select one of them, hold down the shift key and click on the top one to select all of them, you can see a new option here. This option says copy all audio settings to other selected layers except source audio. Using this option, we can apply all of these settings to multiple layers. So for example, let's say we are on this frame, or maybe this one, and we want to change the audio level of all of these layers at the same time. To do that, first we check this option, then you type 30 for example, and after that, as you can see here, it says multiple layers are selected, changes will be applied to all as applicable. So these changes won't be applied unless you click on apply or OK. Now let's say we click on apply, and you can see the keyframes here. Let me close this window. For the audio level of all of these layers, we have a keyframe now. And finally, the last thing that I'm gonna talk about is that when you select multiple layers, since here it says except source audio, if you check this option and you set source audio to replace an audio file with your current audio file, the replacement will be only applied to the last layer that you select, the brighter one, and it doesn't have any effect on the other layers. So this is how you can use the options in layer settings window. And now I'm going to talk about the options that you have when you right click on an audio layer. The first option is reveal source audio file in Explorer. If you click on it, Moho will go to the address of your file and it will select your file. So you can find it really quick. So actually this option is the same as the option that you have in layer settings window, this one. Both of them do the same thing. The next option that we have is open source audio file. If you click on it, Moho will play your audio file using the default player of your Windows. So right now, because the default player of my Windows is media player, if I choose this option, you can see what will happen. See?
Would you like to join me? No? Why not?
It will open the file using media player. The next option that we have is export audio. If I click on it, I can save my audio file with WAV format. So you can't save it with other formats. WAV is the only option. And the bitrate of your file will be 1536, which is a really high bitrate. So let me type a name for it and save it. And after you export your audio, you can import it into other projects. So right now, because I'm in a new document, I can go to File, Import, Audio File, and then I can import the exported audio, like this. And also you should know that when you use export audio, Moho will export your source file, and it means that the keyframes that you have here won't be applied to your exported audio. So this is how you can use these three options when you right click on an audio layer. It's time to talk about how we can cut a part of an audio and then import it into our project. As you can see, we have three sentences here, and if we want to cut this part only, by holding down the right click and dragging on this area to the left, I'm gonna move my audio to the left so that the start of this sentence will be the start of my animation. Then I hold down the Alt key and right click on here, or maybe the frame after it, to tell Moho that we want to cut this part. After that, you can turn off the rest of the layers if you want. It doesn't matter how many layers you have. For example, let's say we have a lot of layers. If you want to turn off all of them except this one, you can just hold down the Alt key and click on this eye icon. See? This way all of them will be turned off and you can render this audio individually. Then I go to File, Export Animation, or you can use Ctrl E. I want to save this file in my desktop. Let's call it Clip. And then with these settings and video format and MP4 preset, I click on OK and wait for Moho to render it. After that, I go to File, Import and General Import and go to my desktop and choose the file and click on Open. It will be imported as a video layer, but you can convert it to an audio layer if you want. You can just right click on it and click on Export Audio and type a name for it. So let's say we type audio clip and then I choose save. After that, I can import it into my project. And since I don't need this layer, I can delete it. So as you can see, we cut a part of this audio layer and then we imported it into our project. So this is how you can cut a part of an audio in Moho. Then you might ask, why do we need to cut a part of an audio? And the answer is it can give you a lot of control over your audio layer. In this example, we have an audio. Let me play it for you. It sounds like somebody's walking. And you know that matching this sound with your animation is really hard. The only abilities that we have right now is that we can hold down the right click and move this layer backward or forward. Let me hit Ctrl Z. Or we can turn this layer off using this checkbox or change its audio layer using this value. And another thing is that every audio layer has an end point, and after that, if you want to have that sound again, you have to duplicate that layer. And you know that when you duplicate a layer, your layers window will be busy. Let me delete these layers. So there is a better and faster way that you can do to copy your audio layer without making layers window busy. But to do that, first you have to cut a part of your audio. And that's why we need to cut a part of an audio layer. Now to begin, let me listen to this audio again. So we hear some steps here in this animation. The first step ends here. So we can hold down the Alt and right click on this frame to tell Moho that we want to cut here. And let me listen to it again. See? Now it's time to export it. To export it, I go to File and Export Animation. I choose a name for it. Let's type something like Walk Video. And then I click on OK. And wait for Moho to render it. And to import it again, I go to File, Import, General Import, select my file, and click on Open. And it will be imported into my project. But since it's a video layer, the only channel that we have is audio level. So to have more control over the sound, it's better to convert it to an audio layer. To do that, we right click on this audio layer and choose Export Audio. Then we type a name for it, for example, Walk Audio, and click on Save. It's time to import it into our project. I choose it and click on Open. And since we don't need this video layer anymore, we delete it. Also, I don't want to hear the sounds of my original audio, so I'm gonna turn this layer off, so we can only hear the sounds of this audio. Let me play it for you. So now instead of copying this layer, we have a channel here called Restart Media. If you create a keyframe in this channel, Moho will repeat your audio from that keyframe. So for example, let's say we click on here, and then we right click on here and choose Add Keyframe. and Moho will copy this audio for us. Alternatively, you can create keyframe for restart media channel using sequencer. Let me type something like 240 for the end of our animation, and then I press enter to confirm it, and then I go back to frame 0 and play it for you. So now we have two steps. To repeat it faster, you can use other methods. For example, one way is that you can select a keyframe, hit Ctrl C and then Ctrl V to copy this keyframe and paste it to the place of your playhead. Also, you can right click on that keyframe and use cycle. And this way our sample will be copied over and over throughout the timeline. Let me close this window. If you want to stop the cycle, you just have to add a keyframe like this. See? It will be stopped. So let's say a guy is walking until this frame, and then he stops, and then he walks again from this frame. So again, we can just create a keyframe using any methods that I taught you. I'm going to use Ctrl C and V, and again, let me copy it. And now if I play it for you, you won't hear any sound here, and then the guy starts to walk from this frame. See? Like this. So this is why you need to cut a sound, and this is how you can use restart media channel to copy an audio within a layer. And the last option that I'm going to talk about is the scripts that we have for the sound. We have two scripts for the sound, layer audio wiggle and bone audio wiggle. And as you can see, none of them are available now. So first I'm going to talk about layer audio wiggle. This option is not available because we don't have any audio layer in our project. So to use it, I'm going to drag on this audio file and drop it into my project. And since it is very loud, I'm going to reduce its audio level to something like 0.05, and then I click on OK. After that, I go back to channels and play it for you. So this is the sound of an explosion, and now that we have an audio layer, we can use layer audio wiggle script. To use it, first I'm going to go back to frame 0, then I'm going to select this vector layer and draw a shape in it. I want to draw a rectangle with fill and stroke, and let me choose a red color for it and draw it. And while my layer is selected, I go to scripts, sound, and as you can see, layer audio wiggle is available now. So we select it, and from here we have to select our audio layer. So we want to wiggle this layer based on the waves of our explosion layer. And you can type a value here called maximum offset. If you type 0 for it, the wiggle won't happen. If you type a value more than 0, your wiggle will be applied upward. And if you type a value less than 0, your wiggle will happen downward. Also, we have another value called frame step. If you type 2 here, it will add keyframes on your timeline every 2 frames. If you type 3, it will add keyframes every 3 frames, and so on. So now with these settings, I'm going to click on OK. And you can see that now every 2 frames we have a keyframe. And since our maximum offset was more than 0, if I play it, you can see that the movement has been applied upwards. And if you want to change the values of your script, first make sure you select your layer, then you go to animation and clear animation, and then you choose from layer. So all of the keyframes that you have in this layer will be removed. Now I can go to scripts again and then sound and choose layer audio wiggle and increase the intensity of my wiggle. Now if I click on OK and play this animation for you, you'll know what I mean by upward, because this layer won't move downward at all. Let me clear these keyframes. And this time, I want to type a value less than 0. So let's say we type -1. If I click on OK and go back to frame 0 and play the animation, you can see that the layer moves downward. And let me turn off the sound. As you can see, the animation that we have here has been applied to y-axis. So this script that we have here, layer audio wiggle will only be applied to the y-axis of your selected layer and not its x-axis or z-axis. Also, if you look carefully, you can see that the keyframes that we have here have been created from the start of our audio to the end of our audio. To see it better, if I select my audio layer, you can see the red triangle here, which is the endpoint of our audio layer. So when you use layer audio wiggle script, you will only have keyframes from the start of your audio to the end of your audio and nowhere else. And another thing is that you can use layer audio wiggle script to apply a less or more frequent wiggle. To show you how you do that, first I'm going to clear these keyframes and then I'm going to use this script. So now if I type something like 12 here and click on OK and play this animation, you can see that we don't have any sudden jumps. And it's because we don't have too many keyframes. But this time, I want to clear these keyframes, go to Script, Sound, and Layer Audio Wiggle, and type 1. Now if I click on OK and go back to frame 0 and play this animation, you can see that our animation has a higher frequency than before, and it's because we have a lot of keyframes. And now I'm going to show you how you can use this script. I don't want these keyframes, so let me clear them. And also let me delete this shape. I'm going to hit the delete key to delete it. Then I'm going to bring some files into my project. I'm going to select this one, hold down the control and add this one to my selection, and drag on one of them and drop them into my project. Here we have the layer of our background, so I'm going to move it at the bottom of all of the layers, and let me turn off the sound. On top of the layer of our background, we have a GIF. Let me play it for you. So we have an explosion with a black screen. To find these types of GIFs on the internet, you can search something like cartoon explosion black screen GIF. In Moho 14, since we can see the blend mode in real time, you can right click on your layer, go to blend mode and choose a screen, or you can double click on your layer and choose a screen from here. Of course, in Moho 14 this option is available for you, but you won't be able to see the result in your workspace unless you render it. So now I'm going to click on OK, and now Moho is going to remove that black background, so I will only have the explosion and not the background. See? It will be transparent. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go to frame 0 and select my background layer. Then I scroll down to zoom out and increase the size of my background like this. Then I choose the layer of my explosion, increase the size of it a bit and move it to here. And since I want to see the final result better, I go to View and choose Show Output Only, or you can use Ctrl J instead. Let me play it. I think it's okay. Maybe it's better to make it bigger, so I'm going to go back to frame 0 and increase its size. Let me play it again. Yeah, it's good. Now I go back to frame 0 and I turn on my sound. Then I hold down the control and add this layer to my selection. Then I right click and group both of them. Let's call it Scene, and I press Enter to confirm its name. And now because we grouped both of them, I can move both of them throughout my animation like this. We can consider this scene layer as a background, and since we have an explosion in our animation, let's say we want to make this camera wiggle. To create a wiggle animation, you can do a lot of things. For example, one way is that you can go to a frame other than 0, and then you go to animation and choose add keyframe. We only want to add keyframe for our group and not our sub layers, so we choose no, and it will add some keyframes for the position, scale and rotation of our layer. We don't want the keyframes for the scale and rotation, so we select them and delete them. And to wiggle this group, you just select this keyframe, right click on it and choose noisy, and the interpolation of this keyframe will be changed to noisy. So now if I play this animation for you, you can see our wiggle animation. But rather than up and down, left and right, it's like it's going back and forth. And the reason is that This noisy effect will have effect on all of these three axes. So I'm going to change it back to smooth. And if you want to apply this effect only in one axis, you can right click on this channel and choose separate dimensions. So now the keyframes of your position will be separated into three parts, X, Y, and Z. And now let's say we want to wiggle it in X axis. So we select this keyframe, right click on it and choose noisy. And let me play it for you. So this way the layer will shake in X axis. Let me change it to smooth. Or you can apply it to Y axis only. See? I'm gonna select noisy and play it for you. Or you can choose noisy for both of them. See? But as you can see, these movements that we have here are not natural. And as soon as they reach a smooth keyframe, see, they will suddenly stop. So this is not actually the best way to create wiggle. Let me delete these keyframes. Also, I'm gonna right click on here and choose rejoin dimensions. And I select this keyframe and change it to smooth so that it will be removed. Then I go back to frame 0 and close this window. So to apply a good wiggle, we can use the script that I taught you. To use it, first I'm gonna turn on my audio layer, then I go to scripts, sound, and I choose layer audio wiggle. Let me type 1 for the value of maximum offset because I want to apply my wiggle upward, and I'm gonna type 2 for frame step to apply the keyframes every 2 frames, and then I click on OK. Let's see what does it look like. Okay, it goes up too much, and it means that we have to reduce the value of maximum offset. So we go back to frame 0, and then we go to animation, clear animation, and choose from layer. We want to delete the keyframes of this group only and not its sublayers, so we choose no. And since we have the explosion from the beginning of our animation, I'm gonna move this sound using right click to the left, so we can have the sound of explosion from the beginning of our animation. Then I choose my group again, and I go to scripts, sound, and choose layer audio wiggle. And this time I'm gonna type something like 0.5, so it won't go up too much, and then click on OK. Let's see what does it look like. Not bad. And you might ask, is there a way to apply this wiggle on the x-axis? And the answer is yes. It's a bit complex, but yes, you can. To do that, I'm gonna go back to frame 0. Then I right click on my group and choose group with selection. Then I'm gonna rotate my group by holding my mouse between these two lines and drag. And while dragging, I'm gonna hold down the shift key and move my mouse in a circular way to rotate it by 90 degrees. And then I go to scripts, sound, layer audio wiggle, and click on OK to apply the same keyframes to this layer. So now let me play it for you. We have something like this. And now all we have to do is that we just have to go back to frame 0, right click on this group and choose group with selection, and rotate this group by dragging between these two lines and holding down the shift key to rotate it by 90 degrees. Now if I play it for you, you will have a wiggle on the x-axis and y-axis based on the waves of your audio file. And if you want to make it look better, you can go back to frame 0, select one of your groups, and here you can type any value that you want for your angle. I want to change this angle to something like 91. After that, I go to somewhere in the middle of my animation, like the frame 48, and change this value to 90. I press enter to confirm this value, and you can see this new channel now. It's called layer Z rotation, and we can select this keyframe, right click on it and choose noisy to add some rotation to our project. Then I go back to frame 0 and play this animation. See, if you want to decrease the intensity of the wiggle of your angle, you can decrease this value. For example, let's say we type something like 0.05. Also, if you want it to happen less frequent, you can increase this value. For example, I want to type 2 here, And now let's see what does it look like. It looks good. And the next thing is that the duration of our explosion does not match with the duration of our sound. The sound is longer. To match the duration of them, first I'm gonna close this window and I double click on the layer of my GIF. Then I go to image, and here you can see the frame rate of your GIF. So if we decrease this value, our GIF will be played longer, and I'm gonna type 15 and then I click on apply, and let's play our animation. It looks better now. I click on OK and I go back to frame 0. Then I press the home key to reset my view and I play this animation one more time. And you know, we have a lot of options for the camera, as you can see here. But personally, I prefer to create these types of effects by just grouping the whole project, because this method will give you more control over the animation that you want to create. So this is how you can use layer audio wiggle in Moho. Now I'm going to show you how you can use the other script that we have in Moho. It's called bone audio wiggle, and right now it is not available for you. To use it, you have to select the bone and you have to have an audio. So to begin, I'm going to import an audio into my project. Let's say this is our audio. So I drag on it and drop it into my project. Then I right click on this layer and choose group with selection. Then I right click on this group and choose convert to bone. After that, using add bone tool, I draw a bone. By holding down the shift key, I can draw it vertically, and then you have to make sure your bone is selected, and you go to scripts, sound, and as you can see, bone audio wiggle is available now. We can select it. This script is the same as layer audio wiggle, and the only difference is that instead of the position of your layer, it's gonna create some keyframes for the angle of your selected bone. So this is the maximum angle that your bone is gonna rotate by, and the keyframes will be created every 2 frames. And from here, you can choose the layer of your audio file so that the keyframes will be created based on the waves of that audio layer. So I'm gonna select it and then click on OK. And if I play it for you, you can see that the selected bone will rotate based on the waves that we have here. Let me go back to frame 0. And to change the values of your script, you have to apply it again. And to apply it again, it's better to clear all of these keyframes. So first I'm gonna go to animation, clear animation, and choose from layer. I want to clear the keyframes of my bone group and not its sub-layers, so I choose no. Then I go to scripts, sound, bone audio wiggle. Let me move this bone to the right. If you want your bone to rotate to the other side, you can type values less than 0. See? Now if I click on OK and play the animation, it will be rotated to the other side. Let me go back to frame 0 and clear these keyframes. And you should know that when you want to apply this script, if you type values like 0, just like layer audio wiggle, you won't have any wiggle. See? The bone won't rotate. So now you know how to use this script. It's time to show you an example. To begin, I'm gonna go back to frame 0 and delete this group. Then I import the other files into my project by dragging on them and dropping them into my project. I have a punching bag. Here is its layer, and this one is a hand. Let me flip it and decrease its size and put it somewhere around here. I would like to make it smaller than this. It's okay now. Then I want to rig my punching bag, so I right click on it and choose group with selection. Let me call this group punching bag, and then I press enter to confirm its name. Next, I right click on it and choose convert to bone to convert it to a bone group. After that, I select add bone tool so I can draw my bones. I'm gonna start from here. I drag and hold on the shift key to draw a bone vertically for this part only. Then I leave some space and draw another bone here. By holding down the shift key, I can draw it vertically. I release the click here, and again from here I start dragging and by holding down the shift key, I draw another bone horizontally. Now using manipulate bones tool, we can test this rig. It works fine. Let me hit Ctrl Z. And the reason that I left some space here is that I didn't want the strength of this bone to have effect on this part. So for example, in our animation, using transform bone tool, if we rotate this bone, this part won't rotate. I'm gonna hit Ctrl Z and go back to frame 0. Then I hit the B key to select the select bone tool and I select this bone. After that I go to scripts, sound, bone audio wiggle. I'm gonna type something like -90 degrees and click on OK. Let's play the animation. So we animated this bone. Let's go back to frame 0. What we want to do is that we want to tell Moho when this bone rotates to the left side, this bone should rotate to the right side. To do that, we have to select this bone, go to bone constraints, and as you can see, the selected bone is called B3 and this one is called B2. So what we're gonna do is that we're gonna select this bone and from here we choose B2. So now the angle of this bone will be controlled by its parent. Let me close this menu and play the animation for you. But since we want this bone to rotate to the other side, we have to change the value of our angle. So instead of 100%, we type -100%. And after that, we close this menu and play the animation. This is what we want. To make it look better, make sure you are on the frame 0, then you select your image, and then from draw drop-down menu, we can create a compressible curve layer for our image. It's only available in Moho 14 and not Moho 13.5. So we select it, and a curve layer will be created on top of the layer of our image, and we can see a line as our curve. While you're on the frame 0, you can move these points without moving your image, but if you're not on the frame 0, by moving these points, your image will move. So first, using transform points tool, I'm gonna hold down the control and drag to select these 2 points. Then I'm gonna hold my mouse here and drag, and by holding down the shift key, I rotate them by 90 degrees. Then I release my click and then I release shift. Next, I drag on it and move it to somewhere around here to the middle of my punching bag. Then I can just scale it from here and here. Make sure your curve covers all of your image, not just the points of your curve, but also the width of it should cover all of your image. So I'm gonna select line width tool and increase this width by dragging to the right. Then I hit the A key to choose add point tool, and I add a point here, another one here, and another one here in the middle of the punching bag. Then I select line width tool again, and I hold down the control and click on somewhere to deselect all of the points. After that, I drag on this point to the left to decrease its width, and I do the same thing with this one. Let's take a look at the animation again. So now, for example, here, because we are not on the frame 0, using transform points tool, we can move these points. See? Also, by enabling these 2 icons, you have control over your handles while transform points tool is selected. So I can animate the handles as well. Let me hit Ctrl Z to remove these keyframes. Then I go back to frame 0 and play this animation again. I think this punching bag moves earlier than the sound. To fix it, I go back to frame 0, then I select the group so I can see the keyframes. And to move these keyframes forward, we can use this new feature of Moho 14. Right now, because this value next to it is 2, if I click on it, it will move all of the keyframes that we have after our playhead 2 frames to the right. But you should know that this feature is only available in Moho 14. So if you're using Moho 13.5, you have to drag to select them, and then by dragging on one of them, you can move them. Let me hit Ctrl Z, then I go back to frame 0, and let's check it again. I'm gonna play it. Now the movements match with the sound. It's time to animate it. To make the movements better, I'm gonna choose my curve layer. Then by dragging slowly, I play my animation. So here I think it's better to move this point to here and change this curve a little bit. Let me go back. And since from frame 0 to our current frame, I don't want to move the lower point, I'm gonna select these two keyframes, hit Ctrl C to copy them, and then I hit Ctrl V to paste them to the place of my playhead. Let me play it. And here the punching bag should be straight, so again I select these two, hit Ctrl C and then V to paste them here. If you don't know about 12 principles of animation, I already have a video about it. You can go and watch it. One of these principles is called overlapping action and follow through. It simply means if you move the main part of your object, the rest of it follows it with delay. And as soon as the main part of your object stops, the rest of it continues to move. Based on this principle, I think it's better to move this point to the right a bit, and then I go to this frame and hit Ctrl V again. So let me see. It looks good. Since our punching bag won't move until somewhere around here, I'm gonna select these two keyframes, hit Ctrl C to copy them, and then I hit Ctrl V to paste them. Then I slowly play my animation. Here it's better to fix this handle, like this. Also, I think that it's better to copy these keyframes and paste them into here, because the position of these points shouldn't be changed until this frame. And now I fix it again, and slowly play my animation. Let me move it again, and copy these two keyframes and paste them into here. Then I slowly go back, maybe here, we move it somewhere around here and fix this angle like this. Let me slowly play it. In this frame I move this one to the right a bit, and then in this frame I copy these two keyframes and paste them into here. Let me play it. It is very good. So now that we animated the punching bag, it's time to animate the hand. I'm going to go back to frame 0. Then I right click on its layer and choose group with selection. Let's call it hand. And I hit enter to confirm its name. After that, I right click on hand and choose convert to bone to convert it to a bone group. Then using add bone tool, I'm going to start dragging, and by holding down the shift key, I can draw a horizontal bone, and right now I just want to animate the position of it in x-axis, so I use transform bone tool. And you know that there is a principle called anticipation. This principle says when you have an action in your animation, like punching, to make your audience ready to see that action, first you have to move the hand to the opposite direction. So instead of just punching, the animation would be something like this. So first, instead of punching this bag, we have to move this hand to the opposite direction. So I slowly play this animation, and by dragging on this red circle, I'm gonna move this hand to the right. Also by holding down the shift key, I'm gonna move it horizontally. Then I slowly play this animation again. Here in this frame, the hand should be here. I slowly play it again. And on this frame it should be here. I'm gonna play it again. Then I copy this keyframe and paste it into the place of my playhead. Let me play the animation. It's good. Again we have an anticipation. And since we have a stronger punch here, I'm gonna move it to the right more than before. And after that, I punch this bag. Again I slowly play it and move it forward a bit. Then I copy this keyframe and paste it to here. And let's say we want the end of our animation to be the frame 72. So I'm gonna hold down the Alt key and right click on this frame. Let me play it. I think we have to move the keyframes of the second punch. Let me move them. Okay, in this frame, it's better to move it to here. Let me see the rest of them. I think it's better to move this one as well. Okay, after that, let's check this one. Yes, this punch looks good too. I think it's okay. Let me play it. Yes, we fixed it. Now I want to go back to frame 0, and the last thing that I'm going to animate is the form of our hand. So I'm going to select the layer of the hand. Make sure you're on the frame 0, then you go to draw and choose create compressible curve layer. And a curve layer will be created at the top of the layer of our hand. Using transform points tool, I'm going to adjust these points. By holding down the shift key, I can move these points horizontally. Let me fix the other side as well. Then I'm going to hold down the control, drag to select both of them, and then I hit W to select line width tool, and I drag on them to the right to increase the width of them. Then I hit the A key to select add bone tool, and I add a point here. Right now we can't see these keyframes that we have when the curve layer is selected. So to see them, we can actually use marker. So I'm going to click on here and then click on this icon and type A for anticipation and click on OK, because in this frame we are showing the anticipation of the hand. Then if you're using Moho 14, you can hold on the Alt and press X to go to the next keyframe. And if you're not using Moho 14, you can go to this frame manually. This is our punch. So for my marker, I'm going to just type P, stands for punch, and click on OK. I'm going to hit Alt X. We're still punching here. So I'm going to type P again and click on OK. I'm going to use Alt X again. In this frame, the hand moves back. So I'm going to type B, stands for back, and then I click on OK. And then I'm just going to select these keyframes, hit Ctrl C, click on here, and hit Ctrl V, and match them with the keyframes. And then I select my curve layer and go to the frame 12. In animation, we have another principle called arc. It says it's better to use an arc to show our movements instead of a straight line. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to bend this arm and adjust its angle. Then I hit Alt X to go to the next keyframe. And here the hand should be straight. So I'm going to copy these two keyframes and paste them to the place of my playhead. Then I hit Alt X. Here it's better to bend it like this and adjust its angle. Again I hit Alt X, and here the hand should be straight. So I'm gonna copy these keyframes and paste them to the place of my playhead. Again I hit Alt X and bend this arm. Alt X, it should be straight, so I'm gonna copy them and paste them to the place of my playhead. I hit Alt X and bend it like this. I hit Alt X, copy these two keyframes and paste them to the place of my playhead. Let me play this animation for you. See how a simple principle makes our animation better? Let me tell you something. We have another principle called squash and stretch. This principle says if we increase the scale of something in one axis to keep the volume of it the same, the scale of the other axis should decrease, and vice versa. So instead of this animation, it's better to animate it like this. Also, we can use a squash and stretch principle to add more anticipation to our animation. So before the action starts, we can squash our shape, and after the punch, we stretch it. So instead of this animation, our animation should be like this. We can use this principle to add more anticipation to our animation. So for example, I can go to frame 12, and then I move this point. Then I hit Alt X. Here it's better to do it from the other side, like this. I'm gonna hit Alt X, and again. And for the second punch, I'm gonna hit Alt X again. Here we have to move this point. Alt X, move this point. Alt X, Alt X, and that's it. Now let me play this animation for you. It's way better than before. I'm gonna go back to my group, and here at the end of our animation, Since I want to create a loop animation, I can select this keyframe, that is the position of our hand, and then I hit Ctrl C and then V so that it ends where it starts, and then from this frame to this frame we can add some other movements, like for example we can click on here, and using transform bone tool I'm gonna slightly move this hand to the right. Let me go back to frame 0 and play it for you. So now we have a loop animation. One more time I'm gonna slowly check this animation. Here as you can see we have a small problem with this angle. So we select the curve layer of our punching bag and find the right frame. And then using transform points tool, I'm gonna fix this angle like this. Let me check it again. And because in these frames we don't want to move these handles, we can just click on here, select these two keyframes, hit Ctrl C and then V to make a copy of them. Now I want to play it slowly again. So everything works fine. And the last thing that you can add to this project is a star. You can go back to frame 0, select the group of your punching bag and create a vector layer. I'm gonna click on it and call it star and press enter to confirm its name. Next I go to scripts, draw and find the star and choose it. From here I can type the number of points. So let's say we type something like 10. And from here, you can change its inner radius. And right now we want to add this shape to the selected layer. But if you want to add this shape to a new layer, we can check this option. Then we click on OK. And if after creating it, you're not happy with the inner radius, using transform points tool, you can hold down the Control and drag to select the inner points. And then by dragging on one of these corner points, and holding down the Alt key, you can change the inner radius. I'm happy with it. Let's hit Ctrl A to select all of its points and drag from the corner to change its size. Then I hit Q, select it and choose a yellow color for it. Then I hit the T key and move it to here. I'm not sure where I should put it. Let me go to the punch frame. Okay, it's better to move it to here. Also using this tool, perspective points, we can add some perspective to it like this. Let me hit the T key to select the transform points tool by holding down the Alt and dragging on corner. I want to decrease its size. Then I go back to frame 0, double click on its layer. Let me move this window to the left a bit. Here we have an option called animated effects. If I check it, I can create keyframes for these values in my timeline. So when we are on the frame 0, we don't want this shape to have opacity. So I'm gonna type 0 and then click on apply. Next I'm gonna go to this frame and type 100 and then I click on apply. And we don't want to have this star in these frames. So I'm gonna go to this frame and type 0 again and click on apply, so that the value of opacity will be 0 until this frame. And after that with the punch, it will show up. We want to fade it, so I'm going to go to this frame for example and type 0. Then I click on apply and then I choose OK. The next punch is here, so I'm going to go to one frame before it and copy this keyframe and paste it to the place of my playhead. Then I go to the next frame and I copy these two keyframes and paste them. Let me go back to frame 0 and play the animation. Since this path is a little bit annoying, let me select another layer and play it again. For the second punch, I think it's better to fade it sooner. Let me see. Also, let me fix its position. I'm gonna select it, go to one frame before it and copy these keyframes and paste it. Then I go to the next keyframe. Let me play it. Let me check the second punch. I just have to find the right frame and then I hit Ctrl A and move it to somewhere around here. Let me play it again. Very good. I really like it. Let me play it once more. Perfect. And that's it, guys. This is how we can use Bone Audio Wiggle. And now you learned everything about audio layer in Moho. And before I say goodbye, I just wanted to say I'm so happy and excited to share some amazing news with you. We've reached more than 1,000 subscribers and more than 2,000 hours of watch time on this channel. This is a huge milestone for me, and I couldn't have done it without you. You're the best audience ever. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and see you in the next video.